Welcome back to the deep dive. Sometimes the most unsettling stories, they aren't the ones we invent, but the ones pulled straight from reality. Tonight we're looking at a case from Hawaii in 1972, a chilling encounter with the unknown. And get this, it's backed by a real police report.
Yeah, what makes this case so fascinating is that it goes beyond your typical ghost story, right? This isn't about flickering lights or whispers. No, this is about a series of violent attacks, a physical assault by something unseen.
It really makes you think twice about, what safety and security actually mean. I mean, if even the police who are trained to handle these tangible threats can be caught off guard by something like this, well, that leaves the rest of us feeling pretty vulnerable, doesn't it?
It certainly challenges our assumptions about the world, that's for sure. We're diving into a world where that line between the physical and the unseen, it gets blurry. Even those in positions of authority are left grappling with the inexplicable.
Okay, so let's set the scene. It's Halloween season in 1972, and we're in Hawaii. Three women are living in a house that already has a bit of a spooky reputation. Think unexplained noises, things moving around. But on this particular night, things get really intense. They call the police, absolutely terrified, describing a disembodied voice, talking to them, and a feeling of being watched.
That detail about the disembodied voice, that's really interesting. Think about it. You're in your own home, a place where you should feel safe, and suddenly there's a voice, clear as day, but there's no one there. It's a total violation of your space, your sense of control.
It's like straight out of a nightmare. And the officer who responds to the call, he can hear how genuinely scared they are. So he decides to go to the house and escort them to a safer location.
And this is where the case takes a really dark turn. As the officer is driving the women away in their car, they have to pull over. The woman in the middle seat suddenly starts convulsing. She's clutching at her throat as if she's being strangled.
And here's the crazy part. There's no one there. The officer, maybe thinking it's some kind of prank, reaches in to help her, and that's when he feels it. A strong, unseen hand gripping his arm.
He even describes feeling calluses on this invisible hand. That detail, the physicality of the attack, well, that's what sets this case apart from your typical ghost story. We're not talking about a feeling or a cold spot. This is a tangible, physical assault by an unseen force. It raises so many questions about the nature of reality. What does it even mean for something to be invisible but also capable of, exerting physical force?
It's like something you'd see in a horror movie, but the thing is, this is all documented in a police report. These are accounts from people who are trained to observe, to be skeptical, and even they were left shaken.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it, if those trained to rely on evidence can be so profoundly affected by an event like this. I mean, what does that say about the limits of our understanding?
Exactly. Now, the officer, understandably panicked, calls for backup. They try to move the woman to the patrol car, but all of a sudden, the car won't start. It's like whatever this force is, it's becoming more aggressive.
Yeah, it's almost like this force is showing off, like it's testing the limits of what it can do. First the woman, then the officer, and now their car, their technology, it's all under its control.
It's true, there's this escalation, right? It's as if this entity is getting stronger, bolder with each attack. And then, just as suddenly as it stopped, the engine starts up again. But as they are driving away, the woman screams again. She falls out of the car, and boom, she's attacked yet again by this unseen force.
And this time, the second officer, the backup, he sees it all firsthand. He even tries to physically pull this unseen force away from the woman, but he says it was impossible. This thing, whatever it is, it's incredibly strong.
It's just mind-blowing. And then one of the officers, out of pure desperation, runs into a nearby cafe. He comes back with salt and water. Now, you might be thinking, salt and water, seriously, what good is that going to do? But there's actually a cultural context here.
Oh, absolutely. In Hawaiian culture, salt and water, they're often used in spiritual protection rituals. It's fascinating to see how, in a crisis, these officers, trained in modern law enforcement, they instinctively draw on these ancient traditions.
Yeah, it's like a clash of two worlds, modern thinking, meeting these old beliefs. And in this case, the ancient beliefs, they seem to work. The officer throws the salt and water over the woman, and just like that, the attack stops.
It's a powerful moment, and it really highlights those cultural nuances. But beyond that, beyond the cultural significance, this case raises these important questions about the lasting trauma from this kind of experience. Imagine that, the constant fear, the fear of the unseen, and how it just erodes your sense of safety and security.
I can't even imagine. I mean, how do you even begin to process something like that? You're in a place that should be safe, surrounded by people who are supposed to protect you, and yet you're assaulted by something you can't even see. It's a total violation. of your sense of self, of how you understand the world.
And that's where this case connects to something much bigger than just a paranormal event. It taps into those primal fears we all have, the fear of the unknown, the fear of being powerless against an unseen threat. And those fears, they are just as real, just as strong, whether the threat is a ghost or a predator or even our own anxieties.
You mentioned earlier how this case really challenges our understanding of reality, and I think that's one of the most fascinating parts of it. We depend on our senses, on logic and reason, to make sense of the world. But what happens when our senses fail us? When we experience something that we can't explain?
It forces us to confront the limits of how we see things, doesn't it? We tend to dismiss things we don't understand, to hold on tight to our own worldviews. But what if by doing that, we're actually closing ourselves off to a whole other dimension of experience? What if there's so much more to reality than we can actually perceive?
A mind-bending thought. And it's a thought that this case really pushes us to consider. We have a documented police report, multiple witnesses, tangible evidence of an assault. And yet the source of the attack, it remains unseen, unexplained.
And that's where the real mystery lies. It's not just about ghosts or the paranormal. It's about the fundamental mystery of our existence. Those big questions we wrestle with about what is real, the limits of our senses, and the possibility that there are forces out there that we're only just beginning to understand.
Okay, so we've talked about this chilling encounter, its impact, the cultural context, and how it makes us re-examine what we think we know about reality. But let's shift gears and talk about what happened after. The attack is over, but the story, well, doesn't end there.
You got it. The officer, even though he's obviously shaken, files a truthful report. He documents everything. He doesn't try to rationalize it or say it was all in his head. He records it as a genuine experience, as unsettling as it is.
And years later, historians find this report and share it with a local newspaper. That's how this chilling encounter finally came to light. But the big question still remains, what does it all mean?
It's a question that stays with you. What are we supposed to make of these encounters with the unseen? Are they glimpses into another world, a world beyond our understanding? Or are they simply our own fears and anxieties, the power of suggestion?
Yeah, it's a question that has captivated people for centuries, right? That there might be more to the world than we can see. And this isn't just a feeling, it's a physical attack documented by, well, the people we trust to protect us from real danger.
Right, and that's what's so gripping about this case. It makes us think that maybe our view of reality is incomplete. Like maybe there are forces out there, energies or entities that we haven't figured out how to see or understand yet.
It's interesting to bring that up because what really struck me about this whole thing is how those officers responded. They were clearly shaken up, way out of their element, but they didn't just ignore it or try to bury it. They took it seriously. They tried to help, and they even adapted anyway.
That's a great point. They went above and beyond their training, bringing in those elements of local tradition, like the salt and water. It suggests a certain openness, a willingness to try different things when you are faced with the unknown.
And maybe that's one of the things we can take away from all this. When we come across something that challenges everything we think we know about the world, something that really shakes our sense of safety, we have a choice. We can either deny it and cling to what we think we know, or we can be open to the mystery, let ourselves be challenged, and expand our understanding of what's possible.
Right. It's not about abandoning logic or reason, but about admitting that there might be parts of reality we haven't grasped yet. And those parts, when they collide with our world, can have a powerful and unsettling effect.
Like we're always navigating this blurry line between what we know and what we don't. And sometimes the lines get really hazy, and we're forced to consider that reality is far more complex and strange than we ever thought.
And maybe in those moments of uncertainty, in those glimpses into the unknown, we actually find something that changes us, something that changes how we see ourselves and the universe we're a part of.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the Phantom Strangler of Hawaii, we're left with a lot more questions than answers. But maybe that's all right. Maybe the real value of exploring these strange events isn't about finding concrete answers, but about the journey itself, about trying to understand the mystery, the unknown, and the vastness of reality that we are just starting to grasp.
And for those listening out there, we leave you with this thought. What if the things we say are impossible are just reflections of a reality we haven't learned to see yet? What if what we consider real is far more fluid, far more open than we could ever imagine?
Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring the mysteries all around us.